It started as a short video clip uploaded to TikTok on a quiet Wednesday afternoon at a local animal rescue facility. The footage captured by a volunteer's phone shows a scene that left professional trainers in a state of absolute disbelief. In the center of the frame stands a white dog with a black patch named Ghost, who had been returned to the shelter 5 times for being labeled as hopelessly disobedient and unreachable. But in this video, Ghost is not lunging or ignoring commands. He is sitting perfectly still with his eyes locked onto a young woman named Maya who stands just a few feet away. Without a single word being spoken, Maya moves her hands in a series of swift, fluid motions. To the shock of everyone watching, Ghost responds, instantly dropping into a perfect sit, then bowing low before finally resting his head on his paws, following every sign with surgical precision. This was a moment that silenced the entire noisy facility as people realized they were witnessing a miracle of communication. What the world saw was not a broken animal, but a soul that had finally found someone who spoke his secret language, a connection that would soon prove that the most powerful words are the ones we never say. For 22-year-old Maya, the world has always been a silent film without subtitles. Born profoundly deaf, she grew up in a landscape of moving lips she couldn't always read and vibrations she could only feel in her chest. While others navigated life through the ease of spoken conversation, Maya lived in the margins of sound, often feeling like a ghost in her own city. Her loneliness wasn't a sudden event. It was a quiet, daily habit. The way people would look away when they realized they couldn't communicate with her, or the way laughter would erupt in a room, leaving her wondering about the joke she would never hear. She had learned to rely on her eyes, finding beauty in the subtle shift of shadows and the intricate dance of human hands, yet her heart remained anchored in a deep, unspoken isolation. On the other side of that silence was Ghost, a 3-year-old Dogo Argentino mix with fur as white as winter and eyes that held a frantic, misunderstood intelligence. Ghost was born deaf, a fact that his previous owners never bothered to discover. To them, he was simply broken or stubborn. They would scream his name until their faces turned red, and when he didn't respond, they labeled him as aggressive and untrainable. Ghost had been shuffled through 5 different homes in 3 years, each rejection leaving a new scar on his spirit. He didn't understand why the humans were always angry, or why the hands that were supposed to pet him were often raised in frustration. He spent his days in the shelter cage, watching the other dogs get picked for their barks and their ability to listen, while he retreated further into the back of his kennel, a prisoner of a silence he didn't choose. Both Maya and Ghost carried a secret pain, the agony of having so much to give but no bridge to cross the distance. They were 2 puzzle pieces with jagged edges, discarded because they didn't fit into the standard mold of normal. Maya wasn't looking for a dog to hear for her. She was looking for a soul who understood what it felt like to be ignored in a world full of noise. Neither of them knew that their shared deficit was actually the key that would finally unlock the doors of their respective cages. The air inside the adoption center was thick with the frantic energy of a dozen barking dogs, a chaotic wall of sound that neither Maya nor Ghost could hear. Maya walked slowly past the rows of kennels, her hand trailing lightly along the cold metal bars. She wasn't looking for a dog that would jump or bark for her attention. She was looking for a stillness that matched the one inside her own soul. When she reached Kennel 14, she stopped. Ghost was standing at the very back of his enclosure, his white fur stark against the gray concrete. A shelter volunteer hurried over, her hands waving in a frantic gesture of warning. "He doesn't listen," the volunteer mouthed, her voice lost to Maya but her frustration clear in her strained expression. "We've tried everything. He just ignores everyone." But Maya didn't move. She leaned her forehead against the cool steel bars and waited. She didn't call his name. She simply existed in the same silence he did. Slowly, as if sensing a shift in the very molecules of the air, Ghost turned his head. His piercing blue eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat, the rest of the world, the bustling volunteers, the other dogs, the ticking clock simply vanished. It was as if they had known each other from a previous life, 2 travelers finally recognizing a familiar face in a crowd of strangers. The volunteer watched, frozen, as Ghost, The dog, who had spent weeks staring at the wall, began to move. He didn't rush. He stepped forward with a slow, deliberate grace, his paws making no sound on the floor. He stopped just inches from the bars, his breath creating a tiny patch of mist on the metal. There was no barking, no frantic jumping. There was only a profound, heavy silence that felt more meaningful than any shout. Maya slowly reached her hand through the bars. Her movements were fluid and gentle, like a leaf falling through water. Ghost didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned his heavy head into her palm, closing his eyes as he felt the warmth of her skin. In that moment, a language without words was born, a silent frequency that only the two of them could hear. Maya felt a tear prick at the corner of her eye. She pulled her hand back just enough to catch his gaze again. With a trembling hand, she formed the sign for love. Her thumb, index, and pinky fingers extended, a sacred geometry of the heart. Ghost watched her hand with an intensity that was almost painful to witness. Then, in a response that shattered the hearts of everyone watching, his tail began to wag, not with a frantic energy, but with a steady, rhythmic thumping against the concrete floor. He stepped closer, pressing his face against the bars, and gently, reverently, licked the very palm that had just signed a promise to him. Their hearts had found each other in the one place the rest of the world thought was empty: the silence. Maya didn't need to hear him bark to know he was hers, and Ghost didn't need to hear her voice to know he was finally home. The disobedient dog and the isolated girl had found the only bridge they would ever need. The TikTok video of Maya and Ghost's first connection didn't just go viral. It ignited a global conversation about the hidden potential of imperfect animals. Within a week, the clip had reached 20 million views, with thousands of people sharing their own stories of overcoming barriers through love. The shelter, once a place where Ghost was overlooked, became a hub of inspiration. As families began specifically asking for senior or disabled dogs, realizing that different didn't mean less. But the most beautiful transformation happened within the walls of Maya's quiet apartment. Ghost was no longer the disobedient dog pacing in a cage. He became Maya's constant shadow and her most intuitive protector. They developed an entire vocabulary of signs: flicks of the wrist for treat, a circular motion for walk, and a gentle tap on the chest for home. Maya, who once felt like a ghost in her own life, found a new sense of confidence. She started a local training class specifically for deaf dogs and their owners, using Ghost as her star pupil to show the world that silence is not a void, but a canvas. The volunteers at the shelter still talk about the day Maya officially signed the adoption papers. They remember the way Ghost sat proudly by her side, his eyes never leaving her hands, as if he knew that he had finally been heard. A life once destined for rejection was redeemed, and a girl who lived in silence found the loudest, most loyal voice she had ever known. Together, they are living proof that when you speak with your heart, there is no such thing as an unreachable soul. We often move through our lives believing that communication is a matter of sound, of spoken words, sharp commands, and the noise of constant interaction. But the journey of Maya and Ghost has taught us a far more profound truth: that the most vital connections in this world happen in the spaces where sound cannot reach. Their story reminds us that love does not require a voice to be heard, and understanding does not require ears to be felt. It is a language of the soul, a silent frequency that resonates only when we are willing to look past what the world calls a deficit and see it as a unique opportunity for connection. Sometimes, we are not looking for someone who can hear us. We are simply looking for someone who can truly see us. Maya and Ghost have shown us that even when the world is quiet, our hearts can still create a powerful echo that changes everything. Their bond is a testament to the fact that no soul is ever truly unreachable when met with patience and a heart that speaks without sound. The world may be silent, but love always has an echo. Thank you for walking through this journey of compassion with us and for believing in the power of the unspoken. Until next time, remember that the most beautiful things in life aren't heard, they are felt.